Hi, this is the second exercise for week 1 of INT 140 Drawing and Rendering. And these are just some basic tips to practice as you're learning how to draw with confidence and to be loose. So I'm going to do this demonstration using both a pencil, the Papermate Flare, and the Sharpie. So fine line, heavier lines and punch lines, and then pencil marks. So let's start with number 1, chisel the point. This is a page from your handout. For chiseling the point, you're going to start by sharpening your pencil to a nice sharp point, as sharp as possible. So there's the pencil with a nice, sharp, crisp point. When we say chisel the edge means that we're going to take that nice, sharp pencil and we're going to chisel it against the paper. And when we chisel that, we create an angle on the pencil so that we still have a sharp point, but then we have a nice softer edge. So for those of you who have already purchased your markers from Prismacolor, I have some here, you'll notice that one of the edges of your marker set has a fine point and one has a chiseled edge. So we're doing the same thing with the pencil. And so let's just look to see what happens. What happens with that chisel point is it allows you to use that edge to create a nice fuzzy line. So start with your pointed pencil if you're following along, pause when needed, chisel the point and move to step 2 and do that nice fuzzy line, right? It's soft. It doesn't look mechanical at all. Number 3, creating a variable line. You can create a variable line through using a pencil or using a marker. And a variable line means just as it sounds. You're going to push and pull and push and pull to create these nice variable, more organic lines. So again, push, pull off the pressure. You can also even twist, push, twist, push, twist, push to create these nice variable lines. You could always chisel the end some more and use different parts of the pencil. So this should look more, when I use the word organic, more earthy-like, less mechanical. So number 3 is varying your line. So even with a line, I can even push a little harder. That's with my tip. Hit, go, hit. So I'm using a clear triangle or straight edge just so that you can see my demonstration a little better. But you can also use just that cardstock that I provided. Actually, I believe I provided it for another class. But all that is just a piece of cardboard or mat board that I've cut with a nice fine straight edge to use for drawing. So these are real nice. We're going to use these more in a marker class, INT145. So hit, go, hit. Hit, go, hit. So in the last exercise, we were practicing drawing horizontal lines, and I gave you a dot and a dot. A hit, go, hit is basically placing the pencil on the paper, hitting, go, hit. So you don't want to make these too pronounced, but it's just kind of a little, I'm starting, I'm going, I'm starting and I'm going, and I'm ending. So that's hit, go, hit. And for a triangle or a square, it's going to look something like that. So don't do this if you're watching the videos. That's too pronounced. It's not about actually putting a dot. It's just about thinking about your line before you start. And so there is a little bit of a pronounced point at each end. Point number 5, overlapping the corner. So when you take drafting, I took drafting a long time ago in college, and I really did not like drafting. In drafting, you have to perfectly meet corners, right? The line weight needs to be exactly the same, and you need to do something like this. Perfect, perfect. I used to get my assignments back from my instructor, and they would do this, and I would kind of be like, what? I don't get it. So in drawing, in this more of the sketching technique, we're going to go ahead and overlap corners. So we're not going to worry about those perfect joining. Look, I have a little gap here. Now that just would not do in drafting. But instead, we're going to overlap the edges. So hit, go, hit, go, hit. And we're going to overlap those corners. Okay, so we're not going to worry about that perfection. So step number 5, when we're drawing and we're quickly drawing, it's good just to overlap those corners. It's not as technical. It gives us speed as we're drawing. Tip number 6 is called the professional dot. So a professional dot is just what it sounds. When I'm drawing whatever shape, you could put like a little period or dot at the end of it. Dot, dot. And the nice thing about professional dots is they work nicely in conjunction with gaps as well. So if I'm drawing a long line, I could do a dot and then continue on. And what that does is it indicates, if this is still, your eye will connect that line, but this might indicate maybe there's a little sparkle or highlight that's hitting that line. So whether it's in the middle or end, or if it's part of a square. A professional dot just adds a little bit of that character. Tip number 7, again, hopefully by the time that you receive this, you won't have two-sided paper. But if you do, it's no big deal because this is just practice. So a professional gap is a space. So when you're drawing a long line, it's nice to have a bit of a reprieve and do a gap. And that's all that is. And it just gives a little bit of kind of architectural creativity and interest to our drawings. So a mechanical line 8 versus a freehand line number 9. So a mechanical line is to look just that, very mechanical and austere. A mechanical line is a consistent weight sharp line. And it's to look very crisp and very pure and true. So that was with the Sharpie Ultra Fine. I'm using a straight edge again. I'm drawing the straight edge, and when I'm working with a straight edge, I'm holding it in, and I'm gonna show you this all semester since I'm not with you, until you guys tell me that you get it. You put the straight edge, whether it's a triangle or not, you put it in your knuckles, you pull your fingers over, and you're gonna push down with your thumb. So you're gonna push down with your thumb, and then you're gonna pull your hand. Again, we're not using our wrist, you're gonna pull your whole arm. You're gonna let your knuckles rest on the paper. And you're gonna pull away from your very sharp, consistent lines. And by pulling away from my lines, I can observe the spacing. We'll do this many, many times, so don't worry about it. But just kind of take a look at these very precise mechanical lines using the point versus the fuzzy edge, chisel edge. So I'm keeping my drawing utensil straight on, and I'm trying to be consistent with the line weight. Versus working in freehand, where I don't care if there's variable lines, maybe it's shaking a little bit, it doesn't matter. It's a free line. Now, some of you are going to just naturally respond to more mechanical type drawings. And as we move through this semester, I show you different techniques, but your own style tends to emerge, right? So as I mentioned, I'm naturally not mechanical. I'm naturally just, more free. It's just my style. All right, repeating lines, number 10. So with my fine Sharpie, I'm just gonna draw with my fine Sharpie. Maybe this is going to represent a nice piece of art. And by repeating lines around the edge, I could do a couple things. I could give a suggestion of thickness, okay? I can give a suggestion of thickness. So maybe now that this is not just a poster, this is a piece of art with a frame. I can also repeat lines and maybe give the suggestion of a shadow. So repeating lines adds interest, really kind of gives us that architectural character that we're looking for. So in all of my demonstration, these should look like the artist's hands. They don't look like a coloring book. Number 11, the continuous line. The continuous line means that you don't lift the pen off of the paper. So in a continuous line, I'm going to draw a cylinder, and it's going to look very soft and organic, and I'm not moving my hand off the page. These are really nice when you're drawing things like pillows that should look very free, or foliage for a tree or plant or something like that, okay? So a continuous line or a contour line is not lifting your hand off the page. So I use those for things like ottomans and pillows and plants. A three-dimensional line makes something look like it has dimension. So naturally when we draw, we're drawing two-dimension, flat. But to add character and interest to our drawings, we want to add a line to add dimension. So for example, if I wanted to add dimension to my pillow, maybe I punch it up with a dimension line. And all of a sudden, it looks thicker. So dimension line. Maybe I have a soft pillow, and that soft pillow is sitting on an arm of a chair. And I want to give that pillow some dimension. So I add this 3D line around it. And then I can go in with the smaller lines for details inside it to indicate some type of pattern, for example. So 3D, you're starting to see it pull away from the surface of that chair and move forward. 3D, seeing something more in perspective in the round. I try to keep these videos under 30 minutes, so I'm moving quite quickly. So construction lines, we use construction lines all through the semester. Construction lines are very light lines. That you can measure or you can draw underneath very lightly. And then you go over those construction lines or under drawings and go over those with the pen. For a punch line, I'm going to go ahead and draw a cube for you. Next week we'll work on shapes a bit more, but here I have a cube. I start with a vertical line, then I pull out lines from the front. Later on in the semester you're going to get really good at drawing cubes. So there's my construction lines. And a punch line, what we want to do is we want to punch out the outer area. So if this cube was in space, we want to go ahead and punch out the outside edges. So the pencil was the construction line. This dark area, so the outer edges, and then the space is around it, darker, and then finer lines inside. So I hope you're starting to feel like a nice architect. Let me see if I can figure out number 15. Outline thin, dark, tone line thick, light. All right. So what this is saying is I'm going to draw my very thin construction line. Let's start with this, the vertical line, so I'm consistent. Very thin. So when you're shading in a shape, what it's saying is you want to have a nice thick line. So I'm going to chisel again. And on the edges, you're going to go darker. And then get lighter as you move in. So thick on the edges, start back a little darker, and then get lighter as you move closer to the front. And we'll do more of those next week. And then if you want to punch that out, You can punch out the outer edges. And then leave the interior lines lighter. So in reality, objects don't have lines, right? So we'll practice shading a little more next week, but this is really working more on line. Thick strokes versus thin strokes, right? You can do that with different types of pens. Thick strokes versus thin strokes. Those are nice for variety. Same line, again, that's just like a mechanical line where you put a straight edge and you try to put the same amount of pressure down as you move. Versus the variable line. So I'm just going to use that same where I'm holding it longer, then I'm letting go, and then I'm holding it longer. Right? So same line is more of a technical line. So even if you're doing something sharp, you can push and pull and make it look different. But if you want to make something look really hard, like a metal cube or something that's very crisp, you want to use more of a same line. Something that's more organic, use a variable line, and thicker lines. Thinner lines can be done by using the tip of a pencil that's been sharpened rather than the chiseled edge. Or it could be used by very smaller, finer pen. So this is Sharpie Ultra Fine. If you have like a micron drafting set, this is like a 0.05. And then they start getting smaller, like 0.03, and they can get finer and finer. And those are good for details. So thicker lines are better for outside edges, like our punch line. Thinner lines are better for detail. Almost done. Over the edge, I'm just going to draw a quick tree. So there's my quick tree. So when we say over the line, what that means is that in sketching, we don't try to perfectly stay in the line. So in kindergarten, we were taught if you're going to color something in, stay within that line. That's what we were taught. But in sketching, we want to be freer than that. So I'm going to use my thicker marker, or I'll use this, that's fine, to show the idea of movement, like the leaves of the tree and light dappling through it. We're going to go ahead and not worry about staying in the lines. We're going to go over the edge. Right? We're going to be loose. So that's what we mean by over the edge, that we're not in kindergarten anymore. We're professional designers to be, and we're going to go over some of that edge. Okay? You saw here that I was doing some 45-degree strokes or orthographic. There is a tip to doing this. You saw me do it very quickly. What it is not, it is not zigzag. So it may look zigzag for what I did, but it's not zigzag. You just have to practice, and it takes some time, a 45-degree stroke. You either stop at the bottom or the top. I drag from the top down. Hit the paper, come down, lift up your pen, go back up to the top, lift, go back up to the top, lift, go back up, lift. So that is a 45-degree line. And when you start doing it quickly, it looks like that. And then that's cross hatching. So this is something to practice again while you're zooming or you are watching TV or something. Practice your 45-degree angles. Again, the trick is lift. I'm exaggerating. Lift, lift, lift. Going up, lift, lift, lift. So gradual value change means that in drawings, we want to gradually go from light to dark. So as we practice in this class, we want to have really white of the page, crisp points in our drawing, medium tones, and dark tones. So just for this example, I'm going to chisel the point of my pencil, and we're going to go from, I'm going to press harder, and I'm going to press the hardest. So here I did a gradual value change. I could do this through hatching as well, like spacing, putting more together, and then even getting closer. We're going to do this more next week. So we can either work with pressure or spacing of hatching, but we want to make sure that our drawings have light, medium, dark. Go ahead and just practice some stripes. And this is a perfect time to practice using the straight edge before we leave. Practice stripes. I'll use a different, nope, I have this one. Place a straight edge. Turn your fingers, put your knuckles on the page, and press down with your thumb. Draw a stripe. Pull away from the stripe to suggest spacing. Draw a stripe. Pull away, eyeball the spacing. Draw a stripe. Pull away, eyeball your spacing. Draw another line. Pull away. And so by pulling away, I'm able to gauge the spacing of my lines without using a ruler or a measuring tape. Your final point in this exercise is dots. So here is what not to do. What not to do is to go dot, dot, although you can, it's going to take forever. Dot, 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 dot. So that looks pretty darn good, but it's going to just take too much time for very loose sketching. So what you want to do is you want to put your instrument in your hand, and you want it to keep it very loose. And you're going to let gravity, as you're hitting the page, you're going to let gravity make the pen bounce. And as you're moving, you're pushing down, you're letting the pen bounce, and then you're moving around the page. So you can practice. You can practice with your dots. So I encourage you to be free to do this. And you know, but if you want to be very perfect, I'm holding really tight and I'm pushing down and I'm making more perfect dots. What you're trying to avoid is dots with little tails. Right, so you're really trying to be more vertical. That's the end of this lesson. Thank you and enjoy the process. If you want to practice first on this and then just grab another sheet of paper to turn in and do it a second or third time. I have students last semester who turned in their work. This was my first try, this was my second try, this was my third try. For me, in terms of grading, you get points just for trying. Have a great day and see you next exercise.